All right, 1 minute.
All right.
I started the recording. All right, Roz.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Roz Tucker, Managing Director of Mobility Services at ARC. And before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see everything on your screen now. There should be a screenshot of the attendee interface. And you'll have a panel to the side. If you need to mute yourself, you would click on the no audio circle. And then, of course, to come back on, you just scroll back up to the computer audio. Or if you're on a phone call, you'll see that in the middle. And of course, you'll see something that looks like your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. And you're listening in using your computer speaker by default. So if you'd prefer to join over the phone, again, just select telephone in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed when you click on phone call. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions. You can place those in the chat box at the bottom. And then at the end, we will take questions, and you can continue to place those in throughout the presentation. And so now I'll get going. I've already had a chance to introduce myself. Again, I'm Roz Tucker, Managing Director of Mobility Services at ARC. And we oversee the Georgia Commute Options commuter program. We work with local employers, local county governments to help encourage their commuters to utilize a clean commute. And today we're going to focus on teleworking. So today our focus is looking at how we can maximize productivity for business continuity, and looking at what today's reality is. We all know that this is an unprecedented crisis that we have going on, and we won't be as exhaustive in this training as we would normally be. It's usually several hours of training. Today, I'm really just going to be very high level and give you a quick guide for how to move forward on getting a telework program started at your site, and how to have resources. You'll have resources at your fingertips for your managers. So we don't have the luxury, because of where we are right now, of testing out and doing pilots. Those are things we normally do. And of course, we don't have time to necessarily develop policies and guidelines, but we will make sure that we are available for you should you like to get into more detail. And so my information will be available. It's in the slide here, will be available at the end, and you can reach out to me and we'll be more than happy to support you along the way. So we want you to know that you're not in this alone. We're here to support you, and we have the resources that you'll need to be successful with this. Typically, management commitment for teleworking is tied to a number of things. And you'll see those here on the screen, but we're really just going to focus on business continuity right now. That's usually one of the elements that we talk about, but we're going to focus on the key one today. I'm sure all of you are concerned about how you'll keep business going during this time frame when most of your staffs may be teleworking. And so we'll look at it from this angle. And so what I want to focus on first is really looking at the manager's role in creating a work environment that can support teleworking and productivity given limitations to staff. Sorry, I kind of got ahead a little bit there. Let me get you back to that slide. We do have a unique situation going on right now because employees are having to deal with children at home, maybe young adults, or older parents that they're taking care of, sick family and friends that they're taking care of. And so the general space for teleworking and the conditions right now are not necessarily the best. However, we have strategies that I believe can help this be the best situation for you and your teams. And so we'll talk about that. The right mindset during this time we've discussed at ARC is really being understanding and forgiving of everyone's situation. So looking at how you would handle an employee who has children at home during this time, and really being able to agree upon what the expectations are. And we'll talk about how important it is to have the level of communication in place beforehand so that you have those touch points. And so setting up the telework experience, the key to that is goal setting and telemanaging through goal setting with the teleworkers. And we've got a few points here that you want to assist the employee with organizing their work through scheduled meetings, whether that's a daily meeting every other day, or if you have reports and then your staff who has reports are meeting with their direct reports, go ahead and decide what that chain will look like, and then how they'll organize the work, and whether those meetings will happen via telephone or via video, and then decide on what the scope of that work is going to look like. You want to define the deliverables as much as you can be clear about what the end product should be, the better. Of course, working with your teams to figure out what those things are that absolutely must get done during this time. What are some of the non-negotiables that have to be achieved while they're teleworking? And then there may be things, because we are in these difficult times, there may be things that you might put on hold until you get back into the office. But really considering what things must continue to get done, things that are mission critical during this time. You also want to establish timeframes, and then again, ask, review, and of course, be ready to coach and to recycle this process. It's also important to create a telework task schedule. And many of you already have a template deliverable-based form, such as Monday.com. You may be using other, like Asana. We utilize Asana as well internally so that you can go in and track projects, you could track concerns and movement on those projects. The key here, though, is to have something in place that you can utilize to keep employees accountable and managers aware of the work that is getting done during this emergency period. And of course, if you don't have software in place for this, you can always use a simple spreadsheet. And just having everyone list out their work and their key projects on the spreadsheet and submitting those and just updating those on an as needed basis. So teleworking, it fundamentally changes how we communicate. It changes our ability to stay on top of tasks, to know what is being done. A lot of times you hear managers say, well, if I don't see them, how do I know they're working? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And that is a valid question. But I'll also say something that we talk about a lot often is when you see people, how do you know that they're working? And one of the ways that we know is through communication of deliverables and tasks. So you understand that outputs, things are happening, projects are getting completed, things are being done, folks are able to report back to you what they are doing. So during this process, you want to assess your current communication practices because it is important because they are out of sight. You'll need to have a communication mode in place so that you can understand what's going on a daily basis. Whether you have to report up or report out, you always know and you're on top of the work that is getting done. So determine the best route of communication for you and your team. We're using Microsoft Teams. That's worked well for us. Some others are utilizing Skype, and you may have various platforms that you utilize. And we'll get into I won't get so much into that technology conversation, but determine what's going to work best. And then, of course, know that occasionally impromptu communications will have to happen. And you want to make sure your team is aware that, if you're trying to reach them as soon as they can, you want to give folks time. We want to be understanding during this season and forgiving, but at least, within the next 30 minutes to respond. And if it's something critical that you need right away, to be able to note that you need a response right away, ASAP. Make it high priority, whether it's in the email or via telephone. And also let your teams know that it's okay for them to interrupt you. They may have projects that they're working on and they need your input, they need your approval, something that's mission critical. Let them know it's okay to text you or to shoot you an email or to even give you a call to see if you're available for a longer chat. And ask employees to be available, of course, during the degree possible during these core hours, especially with the children home. Some strategies for that might look like, and just to give some detail, we're gonna be considerate, we're gonna be understanding, but we also know that work has to continue and projects have to get done. And so you might ask them to sort of give you a look at their schedule. What will that look like? What will your day look like? And then you all agree on, if that can work or not. And I think most folks want it to work. We have to make it work. We're in a very unique situation, but communicate what that looks like so that you have an understanding up front when they're not online or when they're not available. Teleworkers and communication. Again, talking about how communication is fundamentally changed during telework. They should be accessible, make sure that they understand that there are regular touch points with the manager. You can establish a regular time, whether it's your scheduled one-on-one during the week, or if you have additional meetings with your entire team, put those on the calendar so that they're already blocked off. And then ask your teleworkers to make sure that their calendars are current so that if you need to schedule a meeting, you won't have the luxury of just kind of asking everyone if they're available. You may be able to, or you should be able to take a look at calendars and see whether or not individuals have meetings and appointments or if it's personal non-available time. And as you're setting up schedules for those who have children, you might, if they're going to block off times of their day, you might want to ask them just to put that on the calendar. That way you're aware if you need to schedule something. Continuing on communications, being really the biggest part of successfully being able to telework. This is bi-directional, so the manager being able to communicate and the teleworker as well being able to communicate. You want to integrate your teleworkers into innovation exchanges, and that looks sort of like brainstorming exercises utilizing technology. Maybe try out a couple of platforms that work best to test out. We've been doing that to see what works best for everyone. And then some FaceTime is good as well. So you may use your audio most of the time, but there should be some occasions where you can have FaceTime meetings with your teams. And if you have access to video conferencing, try holding a meeting, once a week again. And that helps to have, again, a more fruitful exchange with everyone on the team and gives those who've been isolated an opportunity to interact with folks they haven't seen. So here's a little bit on how managers impact teamwork during a telework situation. There has to be clear direction from the manager, whether that's via phone, electronically, video conference. You could establish the ground rules. This is how we'll telework. This is what works best. Some managers like to see their teams logged in on Skype or the various platforms. So if that's something that you utilize, whatever that technology platform is, you could say, I'd like to, be able to look to see that everyone's logged in. And that gives you a level of comfort that folks are online, they're on their computer, and then they're getting work done. Always have an agenda, a clear agenda. And what we're recommending right now during these special circumstances is really to limit your team huddles to about 15 minutes. Just recognizing that there are probably children in the home. And so if you could have shorter meetings where possible during this time, the better. And then you're less apt to have as many interruptions. And so that would require, again, having really tight agendas and clear topics for your meetings. And of course, you're going to have those meetings where maybe you're meeting with other folks outside of the organization that might be a little longer. And so you want to be sure to stress, we've got an hour's meeting. If you all could block out that time, and we'll talk about letting family know you're going to be on a call for an hour, hour and a half, and that they would need that time quiet as much as possible. And then keep in mind, as you're managing volunteers during these very different times, that working alone for days without interaction, can be a lot of stress for someone. And so find ways to bring the team together while we're still observing, being socially distant from each other. Look at ways to unite your teams while they're not together. You don't want to lose anyone. You want to keep everybody connected, having those touch points. And it could even be as simple as having a text chain that you have everyone in your phone. You can text and see how everybody's doing. They can hit you back quickly. Just making those touch points again so that everyone remains connected. And really the manager serves as the center of the universe for this, and keeping that connectivity going, knowing your team, knowing who's a great teleworker and who might be a little more challenged. If you have folks who, they might have tended to goof off a little bit, you may have to kind of nudge them a little bit more during this season and work a little closer with them during this time. And then you want to make sure that your teleworkers are trained. We do have information, it's the do's and don'ts for a teleworker that we will make available to you. So as you're getting this training, we also have training for teleworkers to be the best teleworker that they can be. I talked about utilizing technology and platforms just a little bit. We do have a technology checklist. We have a presenter that's going to go into that. Ray is going to get into detail, but I just wanted to show you this. I won't go through everything on here, but these are some things from the employee perspective and the employer perspective that you can utilize just to make sure these things are in place and that you're able to be successful and that your teleworker is able to be a successful teleworker. And here are some other technology examples. Kind of browse this, you can see the VPN, of course, is very important. Having cloud storage, conference call ability, screen sharing ability. And I can't say enough about the project management tool. That is key during this time where you won't be able to huddle quickly in the office. That project management tool will help tip the balance of the success of everyone not being in the same location. And then, of course, having a video conference availability, whether it's GoToMeetings, as we're on now, there's Zoom, there's Microsoft Teams, WebEx, and there's even Uber Conference and Join Me. Any of those would work just fine. Some of them cost, and some of them there is no cost up to a certain number of folks. But these are some things that you could use. And of course, there's instant messaging as well. These are good when you need something really quick. Couple of tips for managers I've mentioned already is to really keep your team huddles as short as possible when folks are working remotely. And that way you lower the probability of having loud interruptions, such as the kids or the dog and those things, and just being thoughtful. You also want to work to build trust through interaction so that teleworkers will let you know when there's a problem and involve you in the solution to the problem. Have virtual breaks. Remind folks, and that's in some of our dues for teleworkers, is we really share with them that it's important to take a break during the day and not to sit at their computer all day without grabbing a bite to eat, having their lunch away from their working space. We know working space now could very much be makeshift. It may not be a desk, but taking a break from that actual workspace. A desk is ideal, but that may not be the case right now. And then make sure that employees have work-life balance. Data shows us that people who telework tend to work longer hours because they want to work hard to make sure that they are being responsible, and they also want to keep the ability to telework. So they tend to put in a lot more hours in making sure that they are delivering on their projects and getting their work done. And then, of course, ensuring, we talked about this a little bit, but make sure you're problem solving issues as they arise, letting your teams know that if they have questions, concerns, there may be operational needs that have not been addressed, and allowing them the opportunity to place those questions, whether it's sending you a text or sending you an email. You do want to have that conversation. If they're having an issue with their work, if a deliverable is not going to happen, asking them to just let you know. And then if there's something that you can assist with or a team can assist with. And I've talked about measuring for performance versus presence. Again, the train of thought often with managers, we've surveyed managers across the region. And one of the big questions that comes up every time is, how do I know they're working when I don't see them? And again, that is measured by outputs. So when you don't see people and they're not in your presence in the office, they should be getting work done. They should be emailing you, sending a notice of what they're completing, laying out the details. They should be attending meetings. They should be on calls. No one should be missing unless you've authorized them to not be present. And you also want to use, if you have at your disposal, a management system that you utilize to assess employee work, such as key performance indicators. You've already laid those out for their job task. Job descriptions are good. You can use those as well. And then, of course, the project management platforms, I can't speak enough of. There are a number of them, and you can find the one that works best for you. And of course, a simple spreadsheet if you don't have access to any of those. And take time to get buy-in from your employees and make sure everybody feels empowered and accountable for the work. Here's a little bit on planning for success. I won't go through all of these because I've talked about most of these in general, but I can't stress enough the importance of acting on problems as they arise. You won't be able to wait until you get back into the office. You'll have to take care of things as they come up. And then know that with this all, there will be an adjustment period initially. Some folks have never teleworked, and some, here and there. And so allow your teleworker to learn how to become a good teleworker. And again, we can tool you with the information to share with your teleworkers on how to be the best teleworker. A little bit that we would suggest in terms of talking to teleworkers, some of the things that they should do is maintain contact with their teams and their coworkers. Of course, following company protocol for security. This is important, especially in the governmental industry, even in many, many areas, but particularly in the work that we do. We have a lot of information on individuals and processes and programs and personal information. You want to remind them that it's important that they keep all of this information secure. Providing it in writing is important. And this is a little bit into policy, but make sure that when you're sharing your protocol that you include this in that information. And then ask them to keep their managers informed. I've talked about a bit. And showing up for meetings, that's key. We also recommend in our dues for teleworkers that they not start bad habits. It could be really easy to start bad habits, such as sleeping late in the morning. That would be easy to do. We make the recommendation that they keep their same or similar schedule in getting up and getting started with their work. As I mentioned, recommending that you have a dedicated site where folks log in. And that way they're logged in, you can see that they're logged in, everybody's ready to go. And they feel a sense of responsibility and accountability to that. So ask them just to keep a routine. And of course, during these times, that may vary from employee to employee, depending on their personal situation at home at this current time. I've really touched on this slide quite a bit, but just reminding them to share with family and friends that they are working, but yet understanding that many employees again, do have children at home right now. These are recommended ergonomics. These are ideal. These are things that typically the employee would have already purchased. Most organizations do not provide these items, and so it is not expected that you would be able to provide a desk or a chair or even lighting for your folks who are teleworking. This is typically something that they would do for themselves. But we do recommend that you mention it and just reflect on the fact that they should and should have, we should say, a desk, a chair, and good lighting to do their work. You'd also want to look at safety. That's a big deal. Folks who are teleworking are covered under workers' comp. So if you mention it and lay these things out as you roll out your situational telework program right now, then you've addressed that with your employees. And these are just some of the things listed here. I won't go through them all. And some of the characteristics of a successful telework program, you might ask, how will I know that this is going well? It will feel seamless to the world and everyone else on the outside. You don't put an out of office on your email. You are actually in the office. You're just working from home. It's also flexible. So if you need to make some changes to it, everyone understands that that may have to happen from time to time. Folks are easily accessible. So you're not having trouble reaching folks. They're not having trouble reaching you. And you're constantly getting the information that you need. And that's happening through the established communication channels that you have already put in place. So let's talk a little bit about working in a time of the coronavirus. A key point here is just to really normalize remote work for everybody participating. So just really make this a part of your normal routine and that it's understood to be the normal practice currently. It's our new normal, we'll call it, for everyone. But adapt to task that can be done well remotely. And what I mean by that is there may be some things that you're only able to get done at your office. So you may have to be creative with some of your staffs. So this might be a time where you have someone that maybe, let's say maybe their task is to answer the phone at the front desk. This might be a good time for them to do some research projects or to try out new technology or to document some lessons learned on a past project. This is also a great time to write SOPs, your standard operating procedures for various functions that you do. So you could also get creative and adapt to things that could be done well remotely, but also identify the best people to be able to get those types of projects done. And then use the opportunity to make remote work successful. You can be successful. Your teleworkers can be productive, and it's even shown they can have more productivity during this time because there's less disruption during their day. They can really be centered and focused on getting the work done. I want to show you a little a page that I shouldn't say a little page. There's a lot of information here, but I want to take you to this. Georgia Commute Options, we have set up a page for you to get a quick start guide. So a lot of the things that I've talked about today for the actual teleworker will be included in this guide. And so if you click on this link, you'll have access to the PowerPoint. It'll take you right to this guide. Now I'm going to try to go back into my presentation here. Hang on a second. Awesome. And that's it for the portion of telework. As I mentioned, this is not exhaustive, and I'm going to be available, after today to assist anyone with setting up their telework program and creating more structure around it, and any documents and information that you might need to get moving along. I'm available to do that. And now I'm happy to pass it along to Ray Randolph.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Randolph. I'm the IT manager for the Atlanta Regional Commission, and we're just going to kind of look at some things. We're not going to cover every piece of technology, but we're going to tell you how we got from A to Z. I can definitely say, even with the virus itself, we haven't been left scrambling or trying to figure out what to do for staff. They're able to access remotely, they're able to collaborate, and this is just done from things that we've done in the past to prepare for in the past. One thing that we realized a while ago, if we think back to the storm of 2011, and that wasn't the storm we had when everything was stuck on the highway. This was a storm where that happened overnight, and it was really hard for people to get work. Most people were stranded for about 3 to 4 days. At that time, we just kind of measured everything out as far as remote access, how were people working, and the things that we realized when we came back to look at what worked and what didn't work. We realized that our Windows remote desktop, it was complicated. It wasn't easy for staff to use, and there were a lot of bandwidth issues. Staff couldn't collaborate well, and the tools that we had were just pretty inefficient. So from each incident that we've had prior, we've had lesson learned, and we've just sat around and kind of talked about what could we do to make things better. And there was definitely inadequate performance and no monitoring tools. So we really had no idea. We couldn't give the managers any information that they were requesting. So one thing that we did, we continued to work with Windows remote desktop, and that's simply because it was a more inexpensive tool than using VPN. But what we did was we added a certificate server. At one point, we would have to have everybody's information or IP address in a router, which had to be maintained, which was staff time. We had to remove and add and things of that nature. But you can add a Windows certificate server, which if you're already using Windows Active Directory or Windows Server, you can add that certificate server pretty inexpensively. And if staff are not mobile, they don't have mobile devices, they can actually connect to that system internally, and it's like they're working from their desk. And then you had very restrictive software versions itself. In order, if you had dual monitors at work and you had dual monitors at home, if one operating system, which was standard, you couldn't use the dual monitors. However, we did the research and we found out if you use Microsoft Windows Professional Enterprise or Windows 10, and that started really back with Windows 7, and you use the enterprise version, then you can use your dual monitors at home. So the restrictions with RDP were starting to get a little bit better and better and better, but that single point of failure was still there. It was always a bottleneck. But when you looked at it on the positive side, it was definitely low cost to implement, and I think that was the most important thing. But as we continued to go on and we had more issues, more staff, accessing the internal network was a difficult situation. So when we moved into our new building, we decided ourselves that we would actually, someone's clicking the mouse. We would actually, I'm sorry, guys. We would actually go with VPN. And we just managed the conversation through our ISP, which was Windstream. I didn't want us to be managing firewalls, routers. We would take care of the internal things like the switches, but we let Windstream manage our VPN as well as our router itself, which made it extremely easy. We use a Fortinet VPN device, hardware device, The client is very easy to install. We deployed it simply by using a group policy, or also when people were bringing their laptop in, it provides any automatic upgrades that we need. Once you connect, it's absolutely secure. And these days and times, it's very important. So it provides a lot of security functions on the side. But one of the disadvantages that we've seen when we look at other, not just Fortinet, but when we look at other VPNs itself, that sometimes it's really dependent on the vendor's knowledge. If the vendor themselves don't have a lot of knowledge of how to set up the VPN, or maybe add policies to it that you want to add to it, then it can be a difficult situation and causes more headaches than it should be. That's why if cost is a issue, I do recommend RDP. Purchase a $300 certificate from GoDaddy, add the service to your Windows server, and then people will be able to access their internal desktops. Only thing they need to know is the desktop name. Everything is encrypted. But one of the major things we did over the last couple of years is we moved from the standard Office installation to Office 365. And it has been a really great tool. And the great thing, Roz mentioned some of these tools within her presentation. Some of the great things about it, our thought was we wanted to move from a capital expense to a variable expense, which means if we didn't need it at the time, we don't have to have it. We can shut down and we can actually reduce cost at times. But overall, it's Office 365 is scalable. So if you have Office 2012 and Office 2014 comes out and you have Office 365, you automatically get that upgrade. We deployed it easily by using a hybrid installation. That means we left a server on site temporarily, and then we had another server in the cloud, and all our users had to do to migrate their Outlook over was to close Outlook and reopen it. So there was no knock on the user, there was no downtime for them, and everything was done properly. It's no guesswork for us. We don't have to worry about updating patches. If there's a major issue with Office 365, we know who to go to. We have a vendor that we speak directly to. And overall, it's a competitive cost structure. And all the tools that you get with it are pretty amazing. These are tools that Roz actually spoke about for the teleworking piece. Right now, we're in full motion with Teams. It's allowing us to have contact every single day. Skype for Business, which will actually be going away in July 2021, and Microsoft is really pushing MS Teams. But the Teams allow us to share files, have conference calls within the software itself, one-on-one meetings. We can set up teams and actually share things back and forth. Planner is one of those tools that Roz was really stressing, and you get that also free. And then Microsoft Forms, if you want to create forms, surveys, ask questions, you can all do that with this particular tool. If you're having problems with Outlook, you can log into the portal and still receive your email and calendar. So there's a lot of available ways to actually access the particular software that you need, not just from your phone or from your sitting directly in front of your computer. And if you're mobile, it's a great benefit. And the last thing that we did was really important. We went to a voice over IP system, and we went with Vonage. The great thing about Vonage is there's an app that you can download on your phone as well as Office 365. So you can use, if someone calls your desk phone and you're not in the office and you have the app installed on your phone or even on your home computer, you can answer that phone as if you're sitting in the office. One of the other great things about it is it has a reception software. Right now, our front desk receptionists are at home because of the virus, because of not being able to work into the office. But every call that comes into the office, they're able to transfer to one of our other phones or to our phone as if we're sitting in the office. So the Vonage app has helped. It's been a great help to us. So it's a great tool also. So for me, and one thing I want to point out too is for all the IT directors or managers that are on the call, we do have once a quarter, they're a call with other municipalities and other government agencies that we have, and we just talk about different technologies that are being used, how can we implement it, and ask questions of each other, just trying to get the best practices. My information is here. So anytime you have any questions of me, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll turn everything back over to Mike.
Hey, this is Mike Alexander, the director for the Center for Livable Communities here at the ARC, and I've been in the background trying to make sure the web conference stayed live. I really appreciate everybody participating. I'm going to, Ray saw me trying to pull out the questions right now. If you have a question, if you guys could submit it via this questions tool, Roz and Ray and anybody else on the ARC team will try to answer it for you. We've got about 15 minutes left. I know a lot of the city officials need to get off at 2 o'clock to get on another call, but I'm going to try to scroll through these and answer any that we have. So critically, I know some people have had some problems getting on the call. And so, of course, anybody that did register, we will email you the deck, a link to download the deck so that you'll have this going forward. And I think, Roz, we can go ahead and agree to make sure they get a link to any of the other materials, especially the ones that Georgia Commute Options provides on teleworking programs. We can send those to you directly as well. Roz, do you want to speak to that for just a second? And we'll start with the questions.
Yes, as Mike mentioned, we do have a cadre of supportive documents that we will make sure you have in your hands to utilize. And these are some of the do's and don'ts for your teleworkers and sort of really training those who have never teleworked, giving them just a quick one-pager on some of the best ways to be an effective teleworker. So we look forward to getting that in your hands today.
Yep. All right, so does anybody have any questions? All right, saw that. And let me go to the attendees. Now that we've gotten through the presentation, maybe I'll take the chance. I'm going to turn on everyone's microphone, so hold on to your hat. Let's see what happens. So if anybody wants to say anything, I'm hitting the button right now. All right, so everyone's audio is on if you want to ask a question. Roz, do you see the question from Stacy?
Let's see.
Will you have a sample SOP for teleworking that you can share?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes. Stacy, yes, we do have SOP.
All right. Okay. The other thing I'd like to say is if anyone wants more detail, especially on the technical side of Ray's presentation, I think we'd be happy to spend some time with anybody's IT manager. If you don't have an IT manager, that's clearly where we want to make sure you're getting the resources you need to get people prepared to be at home for an extended period of time. So all you have to do is email them and we will figure that out. We don't expect this to be the last training we're going to provide. I did record this training, so we'll make that available online, but I do think we're going to do it again live because it seems to be just a better, more interactive way to provide the information, and we'll get better as we do it again. So you can expect that we're going to try to do this hopefully either Thursday or Friday again. If there's a real demand, and we'll continue to build our email list. So if you absolutely think that we need to do this, again, just send us an email to Roz in particular, and we'll go ahead and start getting that on everyone's calendars that needs this additional training. Because I know for a lot of local governments, and as someone mentioned in the questions, it's the first time they've ever had to telework at home. We know this is a big change. And we recognize that we were in the unique place that we were absolutely prepared to send all staff home and they can all work remotely at the ARC. And so we want to make sure we pass on that wisdom to you guys. So with that said, Roz, Ray, anything else that we need to cover? If we don't have any more questions, we'll be respectful of everyone's time.
Mike, I'll just add, if they have any unique situations they'd like to just run by us, we're more than happy to, be able to hear those and maybe help them work through regarding teleworking, any unique teleworking issues that they may have at their respective locations. We'd be happy to help you work through any of those concerns.
Yes, absolutely. And Roz, I failed to mention, I know that there's some additional telework training that we're not doing, but people that you work closely with are. I don't know if that's available to everyone, but maybe you want to talk for a second about that.
Absolutely. We're providing some additional telework training to corporate employers on tomorrow. And tomorrow is just starting out the best way to manage teleworkers. It's going to be an in-depth on just really managing teleworkers. As you saw in the presentation, that's really the key to getting started. And so if you have folks you'd like to have on that particular call, we will also send you the links for that. And then there's an additional one on next week, and you'll see all of the dates noted for the trainings. There are the series of trainings, there are 3 of them.
Yeah, we'll make sure everybody has that information, whether you're, private sector or public sector. I think those trainings will be valuable to you as well, if you can get on those webinars. All right, Raj, you want to close us out?
I want to thank everyone for being on the call today. And of course, feel free. I just got an email, so continue emailing away, and we're here to support you in any way that we can. Myself and Ray are available.
Yeah, and really the whole ARC is available to help you. We want to do everything we possibly can as the ARC to help you, our local governments, while we're working through this challenging period. So if you can think of any resources you need that you feel like the ARC can help you with, please email us. We will do everything in our power to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.